Hello, hello, and welcome to the Elevated Frequency podcast brought to you by the Green Door Life. My name is Shannon Morse, and I'm sitting with Lisa Kirby, co-founder.
Hello, hello.
I can't help but smile to that intro music. I am so down that is our intro music.
Me too. And it's like applicable for every season. I'm like, oh, summer, dancing, jungle, heat. Sounds fabulous.
Yes. So, welcome to this episode. We've kind of been beginning to space out our podcast here as we kind of get into a general rhythm, but we're both really excited about today as we're going to start to talk about some of the things that we have been deeply involved in the last year specifically, which is our experience with really training and supporting coaches to come into their practice inside of the Green Door. So we have a team of, is it really 21 total?
Yes, over 20 and growing rapidly.
Yes. And so we've had the incredible experience so far to be going through our own learning as coaches, as company owners, as entrepreneurs, founders of this little baby idea that started. And now it's really taking on a life of its own. And part of that is inside of the coaching sphere. So what we wanted to kind of share today was information and experience of what we've had so far as we've grown in our own coaching practices and supported others to do the same. And the first question we wanted to start with, and this is really for individuals who you're thinking about coaching or you're thinking about hiring a coach. So the first thing that we want to identify is, what is a coach? And Lisa, I would love to hear what your, feeling and experience of this is.
Yes. So I remember, gosh, it must have been about 5-6 years ago now, like right around the time when you and I met. Online coaching was just starting to come to the surface. It was pre-pandemic, pre-2020, and it was still like this relatively new thing, at least how apparent and ubiquitous it is right now on social media. There's this feeling now, I think sometimes when people look at coaching, like, oh my God, everyone's a coach. But instead of letting that deter you from something you're actually interested in terms of helping people, I think what's exciting is that we're in this new era of coaching. And so to me, kind of what the definition of a coach that's really become apparent is really someone that's going to help you lead you to a very specific goal in any kind of area of life. I kind of feel like the more specific your coach, the better. A really quality, good coach is going to help you with mindset in any kind of area that you're looking for development and just creating a better life around. So to me, it's someone that's really helping you reach a goal. It's not someone who's going to just give you information and then drop off the face of the earth and say good luck. It's really someone that's going to hold your hand. It's someone who's been there before, who's gone through that experience. It's basically someone who's like 5 years ahead of you in whatever area of your life. That's kind of what it's come to mean to me now. And what about you, Jan?
Well, first, I think it's a really great question because it gives you and I the opportunity to just kind of sit there and go like, oh, well, what is that exactly? Because it can be so multidimensional. And what I think you're sharing, Lisa, I think that's perfect. It's someone who has already walked the path, for sure. I agree with that. Your husband, Chanley, actually shared, I think it was Chanley who was talking about the Sherpa.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he gave a great analogy of like a Sherpa is essentially, in this analogy that I believe he was giving, I'm sorry, Chanley, if I'm totally botching this, but a Sherpa in terms of someone who's basically walked the path thousands of times. Yeah. They can share with you what you, as you're going through your own experience, what you'll be up against, the challenges that you can anticipate, what's normal, what's not normal. And they have the experience so far, either through their own personal practice or through their coaching experience, of really being able to speak to you as an individual, but also understand the the fixed factors that will be a part of whatever development is part of the goal in their niche.
Mhm.
So I think when I think of a coach, it's someone who's really walking along the whole journey with you. And this is what we wanted to share and really make sure that we identify is that we feel that, or I had no idea, like when we first started this thing, and even before the green door, when I was doing just nutrition coaching over the phone and in person, and like just really throwing stuff together and just like really doing just what needed to be done to figure it out, not because
Mhm.
there was a template. I had no idea really what the difference between what I was doing in terms of time and attention and what nutritionists were doing. I didn't realize that nutritionists or general practitioners where you go and get your labs done or something in this field would only be a in the moment meeting, and it wouldn't be continual support.
Yep.
It just didn't. I was like, wait, what? How do they just talk to you once? Like, how do they really understand the nuance of you as a human just by reading like stuff on a paper?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure to identify that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because especially in this kind of information explosion age, I feel like a great coach is going to help you sift and sort through all of that information out there and make it unique and bio individual to you, and learning like, okay, how is this applicable to you? What do we need to tweak to help you be successful? Like what makes the most sense for you? Because that's, I think, coaching to me is like the opposite of DIY, do it yourself. It's like for people who are like, great, you've been there, you clearly know what you're doing, you have the experience. I want to expedite my results and I want to see results. I'm not going to
Mhm.
waste any more time, like another 10 years of my mental health trying to figure this really like large pain point out on my own.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is when you're working with like this is a gripe we've heard from a lot of registered dietitians, where there's even more restrictions on what they can do and what they can't do and how they accept payment and all that. A lot of RDs are moving into just freelance nutrition coaching on their own because they're not able to provide that one-on-one, everyday support
Mhm.
that we see, that we find is necessary for really helping people reach their health and nutrition goals. So you're starting to see that, and we see this too with coaches that are coming to work on our team, where they have the credentials, they have the education, but the next step of coaching, the art of coaching, is like, okay, how do you actually apply that in real life beyond just like a one meeting session? How do you actually walk someone through this experience to help them be successful?
Yes. And also to realize that it's not going to be for everyone. And I think that that's really something that when we have new coaches that come in, I really want to understand like why they want to be a coach. Because some people we've gone through the process with inside of what we've developed over the past couple of years. Now we've partnered with NAMS, the National Academy of Metabolic Science. So we actually walk our coaches through this certification program for nutrition coaching, while in tandem, we're giving them the actual business and coaching structure to be able to lead someone through their 12-week journey inside of a container. And the reason why we developed it in that way, and we also, I want to make sure I share this, we also require that everyone goes through their own client journey. So as we've just talked about, one of the elements that we believe actually makes a coach is that they've already walked through the process. So they've already gone from the start to the finish. They can look back and be like, this is what is potentially going to happen for you. This is going to be your experience. If they haven't been a client before, if they haven't gone through a coaching experience and being on the receiving side, my feeling is it's going to be harder for them to support someone in that state. So that's one thing that we have as part of our coaching certification program. be in the first phase, be a client first, and then move into going through study, going through the business support, going through how you structure your experience and exchanges. And then from there, really going and watching a lead coach so you have an immediate template. But this is what sometimes will occur is that so far what I've seen, and we are so lucky, you guys. We have just like, I feel so lucky with our team. I'm not
Yeah.
just like blowing smoke up our asses. I feel very fortunate to have the team that we do. I love each and every person, even the people that have gone through our program and then basically decided, you know what, it's not for me.
Yeah.
So I think that one thing is that in my experience, if someone is going to be a coach, it has to be a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has to be like, I want to shout this information from the mountaintops. It helped me so much. I want everyone else in my life to know about this. And I am going to eat, sleep, breathe this thing until I don't anymore.
Yes.
And if that's not you, and if your goals are, oh, because I want to make a ton of money,
Yeah.
or, oh, it's because I don't like my current job, or, oh, I want my own coaching and I feel like I'm going to get my own coaching inside of this experience, then in my experience, that will not be a sustainable intention.
No. And that's okay. Part of that, I think you nailed it on the head in one of our coaching calls that we meet, just about every week in some capacity. You nailed it, Shannon, when you're like, if you're not into, learning, continued self-development, inquiry, staying curious, your emotional resiliency and development, letting yourself be triggered by clients, other coaches, education, information, and moving through that and staying grounded in the process while you're still supporting your client, then you really have no business being a coach. I think being a coach is like you are absolutely committed and you are in it for your own personal development. And the more you're investing in yourself, your time, maybe additional support, maybe it's through therapy or something else you're doing to just continuously develop yourself, you're going to plateau. Maybe you lose your passion. There's just always something that you can do to make yourself more effective and better in helping other people. So if you're not into that, you're probably not going to last as a coach for very long.
It's true. And if you're not into holding space for other people to go through their process, if you find yourself like, how do I say this in a delicate way?
Oh, don't be delicate. Just let her rip. You can say it.
I'm like, if you find yourself in a situation almost all the time where you'd rather hear yourself talk than hear someone else share what their experience is, then it may not be the right thing for you.
Yeah, so maybe even just discussing some myths about what we thought coaching was. So for me, and this makes sense to me because this is how I kind of approach everything in my life. I'm very information, fact-based, analytical. I'm like, oh, being a coach is going to be so easy. I went through the client program. I got the information. That's all I needed. All I have to do is share this information with my client and they're going to nail it. It's so easy. If they just do the thing, they're going to see results. And wow, was that the biggest shocker when I first started coaching. I was like, oh, not everyone's wired like me. It's not about me. I can give all the perfect nutrition program, the perfect training. I can give them all the right information, even uniquely applied to their bio individual situation. But how do I help them execute it in real time? Then, things like their mindset, their lifestyle, their routine, their habits, who they're surrounded by, their roommates, their family, all these factors pop up. And I was just that was the beginning of just massive growth for me personally, to understand that it's not just an information transfer. There's a whole aspect of coaching once you receive your education of, okay, how do I now lead someone through this and help them apply it in their own life?
Yes. I'm kind of like laughing and smiling and all of the things because you are nailing it. I feel like that's a misconception for so many who start. And that's part of what's been so radically fascinating to watch as we are watching these various stages of coaches go throughout their experience. And now, we have a few years under our belt. So we're kind of getting a sense of what it looks like as coaches are going through that period where you're like, what, you don't learn like I do?
Right.
What's wrong? Like, what's happening here? And and this is one of the reasons why when we initially developed our course, we really made it so it was visual, auditory, practical. Like we had to have all of the different things in there because everyone learns so differently. And we really want to make sure we're hitting all of those channels for assimilating it. But oh, Lise, what you're saying is so good because what we're now seeing is that as coaches and clients are going through their experience, we have these layers. And each layer feels to me like it shows a reflection of self and where we are stuck or fixed in our mindset and where we're open. And everyone will be totally different. And so what we see, in the client journey, for one thing, is that we can almost see where individuals will get kind of a shock back into their old patterns and conditioning. It's usually around week 5 and 6. So we kind of can anticipate that. We can almost predict it. It's pretty wild. Just as we can predict weight change as water releases from the body after a period of time or whatever that might look like for the person. But then once that client journey is over and then the coach starts to then coach and step in and coach on their own, now what we find, and this is really just for anyone who's looking to be a coach, who's going to go through our program, what's very normal is to experience that imposter syndrome where you're
God.
like,
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit, do I know what I'm talking about here? How am I going to teach this person? Like, I'm hearing myself say it. Is that right? Like, and what I have noticed in this is that the imposter syndrome is totally normal, totally normal. So you can almost anticipate that that's going to happen. If you don't have someone to help you through that, it might be a place where someone would stop.
Yep.
And so that's why inside of this container, when we go through our shadow phases with coaches, it's so powerful because we're like, that's normal. Like that's going to be like a 3-month process, maybe 4. And then once you're out of that, you're going to start to get your reps in and you're going to be like, oh, wait, it's like just what you were saying, Lise, like, it's not about me. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, it's not about how much I know anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me being smart. It's about me going like, okay, who is this individual? What are the fixed aspects of them that we cannot change? In this context, it's going to be like our height, our weight, family dynamics. Are you a mom? Are you single? Do you have a husband, boyfriend, whatever? What does your environment look like? And then what are the things that are fluid? You have travel, you have these things, these stresses that come into life, birthdays, celebrations, tragedies that will occur. And then how do we support someone to navigate those as best as they can based on what we know about them and the tools that we have to provide? And then it starts to really change. And then we start to grow just exponentially from there. So I love that you.
And it's so, just to your point, the power of having, like, first of all, I cannot imagine just being a coach and pursuing that on my own. Kudos to anyone doing that. Like, even when you started, Shannon, there was, through the Diet Doc and Joe, there was a community that you could kind of check basis with. But what we're doing is even, I would say much, much more hands-on, where we're working with each coach and training very, very much one-on-one, like we do with our clients. Mm-hmm. So I cannot imagine doing this on my own. I think I would have thrown in the towel after like month 2. I've been like, I'm a failure. I'm not getting successful results. This is, I'm like, I'm doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think what's so powerful in both the client and coach journey is just having someone else or a community there being like, nope, This is normal. It's part of the process. Progress and development is not going to be like this. And we just did a reel about this. It's going to be more like this and like this and like this. So just having that comfort of like, nope, this is to be expected. There is nothing wrong. It's part of it. You just keep going. It's the same approach with a body transformation or health transformation. Progress is never linear. Life is not perfect. There's always going to be these ebbs and flows. So it's really, coaching can be such a powerful way to develop in so many different areas of your life. I just feel so blessed to be a part of it.
Me too. And what you're pointing to is also what's been so incredible to see, the vast like change and development that we're seeing with our coaches. And if you coaches are listening at some point in the future, we love you and appreciate you. And you guys are doing amazing, because what Lisa is sharing as well is that when you and I were going through that coaching training container, it was you and I, and you didn't have, or we didn't have like a container of a community that was going through it all together.
Yeah.
And so now our team of coaches, we're meeting once every week, every other week, maybe multiple times a week sometimes, communicating throughout the week. There's channels where we can ask questions. Like, it's very interactive. We're going through and watching Zoom videos of coaching experiences so we can give real-time specific feedback to their experience. And in that kind of container, the evolution is exponential.
Yeah.
It is wild to see. And you and I have this really cool window perspective because, I mean, I trip out on it. We trip out on it all the time because we're watching, like, now we're two individuals who are kind of looking through 16, 18 active coaches who are looking through more than 100 clients at a time. And we're like watching these like dynamic and unique journeys unfolding. And the most incredible thing is that I think that as coaches, one thing, and I'm going to kind of move into like the aspect of, if you are really going to think about being a coach and what it takes, you have to be so grounded in your body to be able to effectively hold space for someone else.
Yes.
And I think if I could like really share something with someone, like if I'm not grounded in my own body, it's so much harder for me to be there and to walk someone through the journey without me moving into projecting my own experience or desire or feelings onto them.
Yes.
I have to be like, so like I got sleep. I got movement in. I did my meditation. I got nature. I'm hydrated. I had fun. I'm good. You do you. You know?
And that part is very interesting because I've also seen in some of our coaching containers over the year that there are some coaches who use coaching as kind of an escape outlet of like, ooh, I'm going to help solve all your problems, and I'm not going to tend to my own self-development and kind of just like put my mess of a life to the side. And I think that like truly effective coaches, and you can, being this far in and this far along, I think you and I can sense it, the energy immediately, when we're working with a coach who's coaching a client or anyone for that matter, you can really sense with someone's energy, how grounded they are, how, stable they feel, and how much space they're able to hold for a client. Whereas, some coaches are able to kind of put on a show and set everything aside and just kind of, focus on solving other people's problems. But the real effective coaches, I feel like, again, it comes back to their own self-development so that they're just embodying what their client is hoping to achieve, at least mentally, with that resiliency and growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're sharing is like a really good point as well, because if you know that about yourself, then you can kind of like strategize what kind of coach you want to be and how you want to show up for things. And I think that's really the cool thing as well, is because when you're putting yourself in a position to show up for someone else and guide them for like a 3 month and longer container, you have now chosen to be in a relationship with someone and to be a dedicated support for them, regardless of what's happening in your own life.
Yep.
And if, like, even if I think about that, I'm just so used to it now that I don't necessarily take the opportunity to go like, that's kind of wild,
Like in terms of like a big responsibility or just like,
Yes.
yeah. Well, and I think for you and I, it's like, we would have to be on our deathbeds pretty much to not show up for our clients. And I think not everyone has that standard. I mean, I look at each relationship with each of our clients, and even through the third party, like even us coaches who are coaching clients, but each relationship, it's like a family member. I mean, the level of us showing up and being there and staying committed and supporting them no matter what, it is like that consistency has to be there.
Yes. And I love this conversation. And with that consistency, everything that you're saying, I'm just like looping it back around to kind of like things that we can share that are of value if you are thinking about being a coach and what effective coaching is. And I remember sitting with Jeff in Vietnam. And of course, the time change was completely different, right? It was like sometime, I don't know, it was like middle of the night, or it was supposed to be like 10 a.m. in the morning over here, Pacific time, something like that. And I was responding to clients. And he was like, do you think they're really going to care if you like don't respond until tomorrow? And I was like, okay. And granted, that question gave me a really great opportunity to kind of reflect on, okay, why am I holding myself to a standard that says it needs to be done now? Is it necessary? Does it really matter? And what I discovered is that for myself and what I know about the client journey is that it absolutely matters.
Yes.
And basically what we've designed and what we found is the most effective is when we are demonstrating the element of consistency for clients, regardless of how they show up. So we do this on Monday, this on Wednesday, this on Friday. This is what happens in our schedule. This is the kind of communication that we have. This is the kind of work that we're doing. This is kind of thing that we're expecting from you, is that you're naturally giving the example of what consistency and dedication looks like.
Yep.
And then they're able to show up in that container in that way more effectively. And if they're not able to show up in that container, then you basically know where you have the most work to do. Because if you want to have a successful outcome with a goal, you have to be consistent and dedicated to it. So that was another interesting thing. So as we're talking about like, okay, you're going to be in a relationship for 3+ months. This is something also that you and I have discovered, is that not every coach and client relationship is synergistic.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yep.
And it's not bad.
No. But Shannon, one of the things I so appreciate about you and why you're such an incredible leader for guiding coaches along this journey with their own development is you really stay in the place of curiosity. And I so appreciate that about you. I think it's your double Aquarian energy. You're like, ooh, this is like, this client is triggered, or this coach is triggered, or there's some resistance or friction here. Like, let's get curious. And like, it's like you're like, it's like unsolved mysteries. You're like going in with a magnifying glass. You're like, we're going to unpack this and stay curious. It really helps. It really helps diffuse projection and defensiveness. And I so appreciate and admire that, because when you become a coach, you're going to bring with you all of your conditioning and your emotional resiliency. your emotional intelligence or lack thereof, and you're going to see these blind spots of like, okay, I have work to do here. And that's why we always say, each relationship with your client is going to be just as causing incredible growth and value for you, just as much for the client. And when I look back now and I think about clients I've worked with that were challenging for me, those are the ones I look back with the utmost gratitude. I've learned more and grown more from working with them than a client who's just like, oh yeah, give me the information, does it all, lost 30 pounds, like no problem. Like that's awesome. That's an awesome experience to have. But helping someone, like my favorite clients are the ones who, wanted to quit on day one. They told us how much our program sucked, or that they couldn't, they couldn't like follow these basic things, or they didn't have time. And those are the ones, slowly by slowly, we unpacked where we could help them, and just, little by little, we're gonna focus on one thing at a time. Like those are my favorite wins and experiences now, because you literally helped change this person's life.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of I think it was in the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary.
I just watched that. Yes.
So good. So good. If you guys haven't watched it, I would check it out. It's on Netflix. So one of the things that I really, really appreciated about that you're making me think about is, I'm going to not say this exactly right, but it's something along the lines of never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yes.
And I absolutely love that vocabulary, because especially in coaching, it's like whenever we see one of those rifts or those challenges or those blocks or those scenarios come up in our coaching practice, we know that that's showing up as something that's keeping someone stuck.
Yeah.
And we have a capacity to grow. And not to say that, if someone is having a struggle inside of any program that they do, that means that they're stuck. But if they're going through it with grace and ease, and it's like, oh, I totally got this, not to say that won't change their life equally, but they aren't necessarily in a container that's showing them where they have unconditioned behavior patterns that's keeping them from moving into a new experience of self. So when we do have those clients who are consistently being confronted and having breakdowns, we have all of the different sayings of like, the light gets in where the crack is, or, and breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. And like what you were saying when you were here last time about pain is really a sign of healing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when you're going through these coaching processes, and this is one thing that I've been sharing with some of our coaches most recently when they're talking about, challenges that they're meeting with clients, is I'm like, this is perfect. Like, of course you want this to be happening right now. What a great opportunity for them to get an experience of what this feels like and how their body responds.
Yeah.
Like, yay.
So my question for you is, were you always this curious and inquisitive in that approach, or did you feel like, because I've only known you that way, right? So yeah. I'm like, was there a pre-Shannon or a younger Shannon, or that was maybe took things more personally like most of us do? Or do you feel like that's just kind of part of your nature?
Well, that's a pretty deep question, Lisa. I would say, first of all, my curious nature has always gotten me in trouble most of the time. And so I would say that this is the one area where it does not get me in trouble, where it is, because most people don't want to go that deep.
Right.
Outside of a coaching container. So, but some people do. Obviously, some people really like to go deep. And if there's something that shows up, I think in this point in my life, I'm much more comfortable identifying that. And you and I have talked about this before, when there is something in the conversation that doesn't belong because it's a old identification of self, belief, something, you can almost feel an energetic shift.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even have to know the person to feel what the shift is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I was younger, I didn't really know what I was feeling, or I couldn't I couldn't use my vocabulary to go like, there's this thing that's here, but I felt it.
Oh,
And, but I would say if I was hangry, tired, not taking care of myself, I would absolutely take things personally.
yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I'm in that low frequency stress state, then I have a harder time going like, that's not mine, that's theirs, Okay, so let's hold the space and get curious for them.
Yep.
100%. Also, and this is something that we definitely see with coaches, the more reps you get in with taking on clients and seeing them go through this journey, whatever capacity it is in, the more you'll understand that there's going to be a certain amount of individuals who operate like this,
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount who operate like this, a certain amount who operate like that. And it's kind of a mathematical equation, but you won't get to see that if your perspective is only 2 clients.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
when your perspective is 100 or 500 or thousands, then you're going to be like, oh, this is the kind of experience we're working with here. We have these tools now that we've built over a period of time. And it's much easier not to be defensive or take it personally, because now it's,
Yeah, that's such a great point, because then you start to see the patterns and kind of, certain lifestyles or archetypes even of that we come across, and it allows us to be more effective coaches and then deliver like expedited results. So we're not spending 6 weeks trying to figure this person out. We're like, oh, okay, and not to project or make too far with assumptions, but just enough where we're like, okay, we've got the basics down. This is a super busy client, like minimal time. They need a lot of forward hand holding and things like made as simple as possible, nothing complicated. And then we can look at later going into specifics and details. Whereas maybe you have a totally different client who wants to talk forever and really wants to understand like the why behind everything, and you can go deeper with that kind of client. So it's seeing those patterns, again, the power of a community, not just with our clients, but the community of coaches. It's just like, maybe that's the greatest impact of this kind of era of coaches, is just how quickly everyone's leveling up and evolving. It's incredible.
yeah, absolutely. And what we're pointing to here with like having the perspective, it really is, it's having the greater perspective faster. So like any learning cycle, we're going to have the experiences where we're moving through it, and we are generally like excited in the beginning, starting something new, getting into kind of like getting the ball rolling, getting more comfortable, coming into a point where we're like having an oh shit moment. Do I really want this? This is hard right now, that sort of thing. And then kind of coming out of that moment and going, okay, now I think I'm going to keep doing it. Now I have a little bit of a different relationship with it. The excitement is gone. Now I got to keep going through it without that motivating me. What's my motivation now? Right? Where am I going to generate my own motivation to continue to do this thing? And when you understand that there's actually like a pretty predictable cycle that occurs for all learning that's like that,
Mm-hmm.
then if we're able to do that, we can kind of step back and go, oh, I'm here right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like menstrual cycles, just like cycles of the season, like all of it. But I think what's so fascinating for you and I right now is because we're in this, first of all, we're in our own cycle,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle, and we don't know what's coming next.
We don't know what we're like. We just built a team of 20 with little to no blueprint, and we're just doing it.
We're doing what needs to be done.
I feel like this is our approach to everything. We're like, we don't necessarily see something that's like up to our standards or like what we want. So we're just going to create it ourselves. Like the coaching program that we're delivering right now to our coaches is the program that you and I probably wanted when we went through our,
Absolutely.
much longer training experience.
Right. We basically poked holes and we were like, why isn't it being taught like this?
Right.
Yeah. But we continue to do that in our own stuff too.
Yes.
So we continue to poke holes in our own stuff, but we're also like in our own cycle. We don't know what it's like to be in the cycle. We could get a mentor right now, but I think if we're actually like, if we're thinking about that, I don't even know who we would go to mentor us, because what we're creating is kind of untainted.
Yeah.
But maybe that's for another conversation. But we're able to also see the cycles, what's normal, not normal, what it takes, like what's actually required in action, where the differences and the unique experiences are for the coaches and then the clients, and then kind of how this continues to replicate over and over again. And really, the more that we go through this, the more data we're going to have to be able to support coaches to go through all of portions of coaching, from the business side, the administrative side, the marketing side, and the coaching side. Because I think most coaches don't realize how much of coaching is running a business and doing all of the back end minutia.
Yes.
And I would say, well, what percentage would you say that you think that is? Not the coaching, the other stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Like 95%. We talk about this a lot, is like you can have the best course, the best coaching practice, you can be super effective, but if no one knows about your product and you don't show up every day in your business and in real life, on social media, wherever, and tell people what you do and how you can help them, you're probably not going to be in it for very long. It's just oh my gosh, that could be a whole podcast of just like overcoming what, all of our preconceived notions about marketing and sales. I've had to really decondition and rewire my brain of really thinking about flipping it to service and helping people. Just like I always think about analogies, like a hairstylist. Like if someone was an amazing, hairstylist and was sharing about their services, like, hey, if you want to work with me, here's how to book an appointment with me. I'd be like, awesome, thank you. Just little things like that. That was probably one of the biggest things that I've learned as becoming a coach. Because again, I was just focused on, all I have to do is share this educational information and everything's going to be great and successful. And I'm going to have, droves of one-on-one clients just begging to work with me, because I don't know how they found me, but that's what's just going to happen.
Right. I'm going to magnetize them because I decided this is what I'm doing now, and the universe is going to feed them to me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And that part is great. So for those of you who have made it this long or are listening somewhere in the future and you've made it to this part, I think I'm kind of summarize a little bit.
Yeah.
So in summary, what we kind of identify as a really, like, what coaching is someone who's already walked the path. They've walked the path enough times where they know what you're going to encounter, and they know how to support you as an individual through the process, with an element of curiosity and also actionable steps to take to get you there. You can't just be curious. You can't just hold space. Like, you have to give actionable steps. If you're just holding space, that's more like therapy. And so you have to have both. And we talk about that a lot in our coaching programs. Moving from there, like, you got to figure out if it's what you actually want to do, because you're not really going to know until you start going through the experience of coaching, but you'll have probably an idea if you start out as a client in that capacity. You're going to start to understand like a little bit of what's required from the person who's supporting you, and just know that it should feel like you're being held in a container, and they should have a plan for you, whoever that coach is. It shouldn't be like, well, what do you want to talk about today? They should have the confident, secure experience planned out for you. Just if that's not your experiences, maybe have a second opinion. The difference between registered dietitians inside of this, like, health and fitness and nutrition coaching, with holistic nutritionists who are doing your labs, these sorts of things. Generally speaking, you'll be meeting with these individuals for an hour. or maybe once a month, maybe once. And their experience is beneficial to get the data of your baseline and what you might need to consider, but it's very different than a coaching container. And it's certainly not as nuanced in the longevity of your experience as a human. And then from there, if you are thinking about becoming a nutrition and health coach, like I feel like almost part of what we've been sharing so far is like, be scared, but not. Like,
Well, I think it's a good message though, because a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon, and if we can save you, if we can help expedite your decision making process, then
yeah,
we're not going to sugarcoat it,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we're still here, so that's got to
yeah,
say something.
yeah,
And we have a growing team. But to be realistic, you have to just like have an idea that I'm going to be there to support other people, regardless of what's going on in my life, that I'm
yeah,
making that commitment. And when I say support, it's not like you got to show up at their house and like take them on a trip. You're not like, okay, it's 12 o'clock at night and I'm ready. But more so like just being consistent and being able to manage your energy to a capacity where you can show up and be of service to that individual for an extended period of time.
yep.
What else do you want to add as a summary recap?
I love that. The only thing I would add is just that what we're doing both with how we coach clients and how we coach coaches is extremely in depth, very high touch, and there's not a lot of programs like that out there for what we see.
Mm-hmm.
And really thinking about what kind of experience you want to have, how much support you're looking for. I find that the more support that's available, you're essentially going to have an expedited, better experience in the long run, and it's going to save you time. So you're not, running around trying to figure it out for years. So.
Yes. And I will say the other thing, now I'm thinking about it again. I've probably had at least 2 coaches or mentors at a time in some capacity for like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's like I never stop getting my own coaching in different ways. And I feel like that has really, really helped me to um, gain different strategies and techniques for how to coach. I always learn from every single individual, and it just helps to give me a more well-rounded understanding of what's out there, how I want to show up in reflection of what I like or don't like with the people who I'm being supported by. And so I think all coaches, if they're really making it like a life practice or something that's a big part of their life, that just investing in their own coaching and development is going to be incredibly beneficial long term. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not embodying that and investing in yourself, it's like you can't really magnetize or expect other people to invest in you. I feel like the more I focus on self-development and just continuing to evolve and develop skills and knowledge, it is always rewards, tenfold.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Amen to that. Right. If you're expecting people to pay for your service as a coach, but you're not willing to do that, it's kind of cause and effect experience. I love that. Yeah. And so just to let everyone know, if you are considering any sort of coaching practice, but especially inside of nutrition, coaching, and inside of what we do, if you know what we do, you can go to thegreendoorlife.com/coach, and you can take a look at the coaching program that we have. Right now it is June 22nd of 2023, and we have our next coaching container starting in July, and we have 2 spots open. It's a small container of 5. If we don't fill up, it's no problem. But we do have 2 spots, and then we'll cap it there, and we won't open again until January. So it's not something that we promote. We actually, right now, because we are only very limited in our availability because of how much we provide for that education with these individuals. And so we're very dedicated to them when they show up and have their own dedication. So that's it.
Super exciting.
It is. We have got a pretty solid team already forming.
I know, I'm like, next time we do a podcast on coaching, it'll be like our team of 50.
Yes. Yeah. And it might also contain some of our coaches, which I think
Yeah.
is a great next step.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those of you who joined us today and anytime in the future. And we're looking forward to the next one.
Yes. Bye for now.